It's another day and another burning oil refinery. This is becoming an all too common occurrence for Russia. It seems like the country can't do anything to stop Ukraine from destroying the facilities that produce the fuel for the Russian war machine. Ukraine's unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, are just too good. However, it's not just the flames burning, the smoke rising, and the nostril-invading smell of roasted oil that will concern Russia. There's something deeper going on. Ukraine's latest strike has led Russia to realize that Ukraine's drones are winning the war. On August 14, the Kyiv Post was among several outlets to report that Lukoil-Volgogradneftepererabotka in Volgograd is in flames. That facility is a major one. It's capable of processing over 15 million tons of oil per year, making it responsible for 5.6% of Russia's entire oil refining capability. Gasoline, diesel and jet fuel all come from this facility, with all three products playing obvious roles in keeping Russia's tanks, armored vehicles and planes operational. Russia has already tried to get ahead of the inevitable reports that Ukraine had something to do with this fire. The Volgograd regional governor, Andrei Bucharov, is already on record trotting out the same tired old excuse Russia uses whenever one of its oil refineries goes up in flames. It wasn't Ukraine drones scoring direct hits, he says. It was just debris. Volgograd's air defenses destroyed Ukraine's drones before they hit the refinery. It so happened that debris from one of the destroyed drones caused oil products to spill and catch fire. Again, as is always the case with Russia's propaganda. This drone debris excuse from Russia has been heard so many times since Ukraine began conducting long-range drone strikes on Russian territory that it's become a surefire sign of the exact thing that Russia is trying to deny happened. Ukraine just hit the most important oil refinery in Volgograd. As common as the drone debris excuse is, the footage that inevitably emerges showing that Russia's claims are completely false is just as common. This time around, that footage comes from the Exile Nova Plus Telegram channel, which has already shared a series of videos revealing what's really happening at Lukoil's plant. One of those videos showcases the fire burning away from a distance, with the footage seemingly shot by a young woman inside her apartment. While the video doesn't show any Ukrainian drones, the sheer size of the fire suggests that drone debris alone couldn't have caused this. An oil spill, even a large one, doesn't just ignite like that. The rest of the videos Exile Nova Plus shares showcases similar scenes, with the Lukoil refinery billowing smoke into the night sky. But in one of the videos, there's a telltale buzzing sound. A drone is somewhere nearby. It isn't seen in the video and would be difficult to spot against the blackness of night, but that drone is clearly flying while the Lukoil plant is on fire. That suggests that Russia's air defenses aren't as effective as Bucharov wants us to believe, which casts plenty of doubt on the drone debris excuse. Of course, the final word on what happened comes from Ukraine itself. In the immediate aftermath of the strike, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine took to Telegram to take responsibility and confirm that it did indeed score direct hits with its drones. On the 9th of August 14, units of the Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, in cooperation with other components of the Defense Forces of Ukraine, struck the Volgograd oil refinery, LLC Lukoil-Volgogradneftepererabotka, which supplies the Russian army with petroleum products. The Post reads, "The strikes by the UAVs caused severe fires at the plant." The General Staff goes on to explain that this strike is the latest in a series that are designed to reduce Russia's ability to produce refined oil products. Less refined oil means a weaker Russian army, as running short on diesel and gasoline means that Putin's troops are forced into suicidal on-foot attacks against Ukraine's defenses. To be continued is the final message from the General Staff. If the recent past is any indication, the answer is already clear. More drone attacks on Russian oil are incoming. Burn baby burn seems to be the approach Ukraine is taking to its long-range strikes right now, with Volgograd being just one of many examples from August alone of the country sending Russian oil up in flames. Ukraine started the month by causing a massive oil fire close to the Russian Black Sea resort of Sochi on August 3rd. The BBC reported on the strike. noting that the region's governor trotted out the old drone debris excuse as the cause of the fire. It's easy to see why eyes start rolling into the backs of heads when a Russian politician uses the word debris these days. Beyond burning up plenty of Russian oil, that strike also forced Sochi's airport to suspend operations for a while, a happy side effect that allows Ukraine to inconvenience the everyday Russian with a reminder that there's a war happening that they can't ignore. Fast forward to August 10, and it was the Rosneft oil refinery in Saratov that was on Ukraine's list of targets. The Moscow Times reported on this strike, noting that the facility was the third refinery in a week to be hit by Ukrainian drones. That's a good point. This video's only sharing a couple of examples here, and there's one more to come. However, Ukraine is hitting refineries on a near daily basis in August, and it would take an entire video to cover them all. In the case of the Saratov strike, Ukraine hit a refinery that has an annual processing capacity of 5.8 million tons, from which it produced 4 million tons of diesel and gasoline in 2024 alone. Then there was the day before the most recent Volgograd strike. On August 13, the Kyiv Independent reported that there was an overnight drone strike in the Bryansk region of Russia. This one struck a major oil pumping station, according to the Ukrainian military, once again sparking a massive fire. Though it wasn't a refinery that Ukraine took out this time around, it was a piece of infrastructure that is no less important. The Bryansk pumping station was one of the largest nodes in Russia's Druzhba system, the Kyiv Independent says. Spanning over 5,600 miles, that system is a massive network that pumps oil to Russia's soldiers both inside Russia and on the Ukraine war's front lines. Refinery strikes stop Russia from making the fuel its soldiers need. Pumping station strikes prevent the fuel Russia does have from ever reaching those soldiers. As already said, this is just a sample of recent Ukrainian oil strikes. There are many more, and time again, Russia fails to stop them. If that wasn't humiliating enough for Russia and its supposedly world-leading air defenses, the Volgograd refinery that Ukraine just struck has been hit before, multiple times. In its report on August 14 drone assault, Euromaidan Press says, "This was not the first time the Volgograd refinery was targeted. Ukrainian drones reportedly struck the plant on 13 August, hitting the Krasnoarmysky district where the facility is located. On 15 January, Russian media reported an explosion and subsequent fire at the refinery. In 2024, Ukrainian drones also attacked the plant twice, on 3 February and 11 May. That reveals two things. First, the Volgograd refinery is clearly a priority target for Ukraine. It's massive, both in terms of land mass and sheer refined oil output, so it makes sense that Ukraine has hit it with several strikes. Every drone that hits its target causes a shutdown of vital processes needed to keep the plant running. And second, and perhaps more importantly from the Russian perspective, these repeated strikes demonstrate that whatever air defenses are in place at the Volgograd plant aren't doing their jobs well enough. Ukraine keeps breaking through. Now, be charitable for a moment and entertain the claims that all of this is being caused by drone debris for a moment. If that's the case, then more questions have to be raised. Why aren't Russia's air defenses in wider perimeters to stop debris from just so happening to land directly on oil refineries? And if they are, why are they only managing to hit Ukraine's drones when they're right above these refineries rather than miles away from them? There are no answers to these questions because it isn't drone debris that's causing the fires. It's direct hit after direct hit by Ukraine's drones. It's gotten to the point where Ukraine's drones have become the single most important weapon in the energy war between Russia and Ukraine. Russia is no stranger to hitting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. On December 13, 2024, the BBC reported that Russia launched 93 missiles and more than 200 drones in what was the 12th largest scale attack against Ukraine's energy infrastructure launched in 2024. Most of the missiles, 81 to be exact, were shot down, but this strike highlights the contrast in approaches between Russia and Ukraine in the energy war. As is so often the case, Russia relies on sheer numbers, combining missiles and drones in the process to hit infrastructure. Ukraine is more precise, calculated. It does with a handful of drones what takes Russia hundreds of projectiles to achieve. And that means Ukraine can hit harder and more often. 12 large-scale attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure in 2024 alone, Putin. Ukraine seems to be asking. Try that many attacks launched on Russia's oil plants in half a month on for size. According to the latest reports from Russian and international monitoring agencies, UAV attacks have led to the suspension or reduction of production at several Russian refineries at once, both in the Saratov, Ryazan, Samara and Volgograd regions, Newsguy points out in its report on Ukraine's Volgograd strike. According to Bloomberg and Reuters, in August, 3 large factories were forced to stop work amid similar shelling. And that point leads to the deeper issue hinted at during the introduction to this video. Ukraine's campaign against Russia's oil refineries is a clear strategy designed to slow down the Russian war machine inside Ukraine. It also happens to burn up oil products that Russian consumers use every day, diesel and gasoline being the most important, as well as taking away a product that Russia can sell to other countries to generate funds for Putin's invasion. All of that is logical enough. But what Russia has to face is that these attacks demonstrate how Russia is losing the UAV war to Ukraine, and there's not a whole lot it can do about it. Now back to the point made earlier about the contrast between Russia's and Ukraine's approaches to using their long-range UAVs. Russia uses its drones to create fear. At least that's the goal. Sure, it might occasionally target Ukraine's energy infrastructure, but Russia is far more likely to send hordes of drones flying towards Ukraine cities than to focus on legitimate military targets. And when it sends those drones, Russia does so in the thousands. In June, Russia launched 5,429 drones at Ukraine, which was then a monthly high according to the BBC. A month later, Russia broke that record. The Kyiv Independent says 6,129 Shahed-type drones were fired into Ukraine in July. It's all about numbers with Putin. He's hoping that Russia can overwhelm with the use of thousands of drones per month, creating terror in cities and killing civilians, even if those drones aren't doing any real damage to legitimate military targets. Ukraine's approach is far more precise and, as a result, supremely effective in comparison. While Russia considers it's a success if one of its drone strikes destroys a building or kills some civilians, Ukraine's definition of success is the destruction of legitimate targets. This was evident back in February, when a spate of Ukraine's refinery strikes managed to knock out 10% of Russia's oil refining capacity, per the Atlantic Council. On August 8, the Moscow Times reported that Ukraine's most recent series of strikes had knocked out a similar amount, and there have been more since, meaning the figure may be higher than 10% this time around. Beyond the obvious pressure this places on Russia's military, Ukraine's drone dominance in the energy aspect of the war is creating pressure at the pumps for Russia's citizens. That's according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, which said on August 5 that Ukraine's strikes are a contributing factor to the retail price of Russian gasoline rising to a nearly record-breaking $2.93 per gallon. Why does all of this mean Ukraine is winning the drone war? Well, it comes down to fear versus effectiveness. Russia's strategy is to terrorize with drones. While that's working on Ukraine civilians, it's not doing anywhere enough to hamper Ukraine's military, defense industry, or energy sector. Ukraine's more precise strikes on Russia's oil do a lot more damage while using far fewer drones, weakening Russia's military on the ground while creating psychological challenges among the Russian population without directly targeting civilians. Having said all of that, there's also no denying that Ukraine has ramped up the intensity of its drone assaults against Russia. That's made clear through how often it hit oil facilities in August alone. On August 11, ABC News also made this point, noting that Russia's Ministry of Defense had claimed to have shot down 1,337 drones during the first 10 days of August alone. Assuming that's a 10-day average, this volume means that Ukraine will send a little over 4,000 drones Russia's way by the end of the month. Russia may be breaking records when it comes to monthly drone numbers, but Ukraine isn't all that far behind. Combine this increase in intensity with the greater effectiveness of Ukraine's drone strikes, and that's a devastating combination to Russia's war efforts. There's also an interesting point to make about the 1337 number. That comes from Russia, which means it needs to be taken with an entire shaker of salt. It's possible that Russia did indeed destroy this many Ukrainian drones, but it isn't reporting those that broke through its air defenses. That would mean Ukraine's drone offensive is much larger than it appears. Alternatively, the 1337 number may be accurate, but Russia is lying about shooting them all down. More than enough footage of Ukrainian drones plowing into Russian oil refineries has been seen to know that not all of those drones get destroyed by air defenses. Either way, Ukraine is sending a message to Putin. Anything Russia can do with drones, Ukraine can do much better. Russia can at least feel better by the possibility that this won't last forever, right? Ukraine has to run out of drones eventually. Except that's not going to happen. The country had already gone all in on drones, months before the August strikes against Russia's refineries, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky setting a target of 4.5 million drones being built in the country in 2025 alone. Whether or not that target is actually hit is immaterial. What matters is that the number is a signal of intent that shows how Ukraine is determined to stay ahead of Russia in the drone war. Ukraine also has a ton of support from the West when it comes to its drones, as the Atlantic Council noted in a July 14 piece. The article points to a 20-nation drone coalition that intends to add another 1 million UAVs to the 4.5 million figure by the end of the year. Ukraine is also receiving funding by the Danish model of military aid, through which nations pour donor funds and use them to buy drones and equipment from Ukraine's manufacturers. Those drones never leave Ukraine. Rather, the Danish model sees other countries funding a growing drone manufacturing base so that more than 4.5 million UAVs per year can be built in the future. Drones have become baked into the Ukrainian military to a point where Russia can't contend with them. There is no short-term approach here. Ukraine is prepping for the long term, while already being at a point where it's producing and receiving millions of drones annually. So, the strikes won't stop. If anything, they'll intensify. Ukraine's dominance of the drone war is also being felt on the ground. The country is trying to replace as many of its soldiers as it can with UAVs and other types of drones, both to relieve the pressure on its personnel and eliminate the numbers advantage that Russia's military has always held over Ukraine. In April, Forbes' David Hambling wrote that Ukraine is planning to field 15,000 uncrewed ground vehicles in 2025. These vehicles can substitute for infantry and even some mechanized units, and they can engage Russian forces with far less risk than vehicles operated by humans. Also in April, CSIS pointed out that there are now over 500 drone manufacturing companies operating in Ukraine, which is well on the way to creating what amounts to a drone army. That army will need to be maintained. That requires not just keeping drone units, but also maintaining the network of small and medium firms that allowed Ukraine to scale its production during the war. This industrial requirement also creates workforce and education demands, CSIS notes. But again, this shows how drones are being baked into the entire Ukrainian military philosophy. In the future, Ukraine soldiers won't be fighting on the front lines. They'll be serving as technicians and operators, using drones to create multiple layers of defense against invading forces while launching deep strikes against their opponents, like the one seen on August 14. That replacement of soldiers hasn't happened yet, far from it in fact. But it's clear that's the direction in which Ukraine is heading at a time when Putin's strategy on the ground is still to send waves of soldiers to bombard Ukraine's defenses. There's also a sign of Ukraine winning the drone war touched on earlier in the video. Ukraine's UAVs, particularly those that are striking refineries and other military targets inside Russia, are having a huge impact on the collective Russian psyche. They're creating fuel shortages for one thing. Plus, every drone strike ensures that Russia's people can't just plug their ears and pretend that the war their president started isn't happening. As Newsguys puts it when reporting on the August 14 attack, hundreds of thousands of people woke up to the roar and the world witnessed a fierce drama. A multi-story cloud of fire blazed over one of the largest refineries in the region. The fires at the Volgograd refinery aren't something those people will soon forget. The same goes for the many thousands more who've had to watch as Russia's military infrastructure crumbles under Ukraine's UAV might. Who knows, Perhaps this damage to the collective Russian psyche will one day become so severe that Russia's people will decide enough is enough. If that happened, Ukraine wouldn't just win the UAV war, it would end Putin's reign with its long-range drones. Ukraine's drones aren't all technologically advanced masterpieces either. Ukraine is also finding ways to cut its costs while maximizing its UAV's impact, as Russia's forces discovered earlier in August. Ukraine's wooden drones just humiliated Russia's elite airborne forces. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more videos covering Ukraine's evolving strategy in its war against Russia.